Hi, my name is Paddy Hirsch. I'm a senior editor at Marketplace, and today I want to talk about the Uptick Rule. Why? Because there's a lot of debate about whether or not we should bring the Uptick Rule back, and we're hearing a lot about it in Congress and also in the banking community about whether or not the Uptick Rule is a good thing, and whether or not it should be brought back in order to stabilize the market. So what is the Uptick Rule? Well, it's all to do with short selling, which we've talked about before. So before we deal with the uptake, let's just talk about what short selling actually is. Well, firstly, short selling has to do with the trading in a security, a stock, a bond, a loan, whatever it may be, mortgage-backed security, whatever. So let's take a security, and let's take, for example, Citigroup. What's that? Okay, well, that is the trajectory of Citigroup. $45 a while back, $1 last week or so. So what's happened? What would you do if we were shorting Citigroup, which happened, I'm assuming, happened quite a lot? Well, firstly, we get our players. We have our short seller, whose name is Jack. There he is. We've got his buddy, who's going to lend him stuff. Her name is Diane. All right. We've got another friend of Jack's called Jim. Okay. And then we have Greg. This turns out to be a bit of a victim. All right. Or maybe not. We've got Diane. Okay, so how does this all work? Well, Jack calls Diane up and says, "Can you lend me a share of Citigroup?" Diane says, "Okay, I'll lend you one share." Here it is, one share of Citi. Okay, Jack decides to short this share. So what he does is he jumps into the market and he says, "Okay, I am going to sell this share of Citigroup at $2. There it is, there's the mark, $2. And he sells it to Jim. So Jim buys it for $2. Jack has now got $2 and no share of Citi. Okay, because he's sold it. Jim has now got a share of Citi. Okay. Jack then decides, okay, I'm now going to wait for this stock to fall, then I'm going to buy it back, and so that I can give the share back to Diane, because he has to give it back in a certain number of days. So he waits for the stock to fall, so it drops to $1. And this is when Jack steps back in again. He goes to Greg, he says, "Greg, have you got any shares of Citigroup?" Greg says, "Yeah, I've got shares of Citigroup. Can I have one, please?" "Oh, it's $1 a share." "All right, no worries." So Jack gives $1 to Greg, takes this share. Jack has now got his share back, okay, and he's got $1 because that's the money that he's left with. Greg has now got the other dollar. Jack then takes the share of Citigroup and returns it to Diane. So Diane's now got that share. Okay, what does that leave Jack with? It leaves him with $1. So multiply it however many times you want. That's essentially how short selling works. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't like short selling. They say, oh, well, if there's a lot of Jacks, they're all doing it at the same time, they're all taking advantage of a stock's weakness or whatever it may be, it can drive down the price of a stock, and then you have all sorts of people that have levered up to get into the market, and they have to sell their positions. And so there are all sorts of arguments against short selling. Okay? But the biggest argument against short selling is that it's all done on a decline. So people are talking about bringing back the Uptick Rule. So what's the Uptick Rule? Well, let's talk about this Citigroup stock. Well, Citigroup, any share, in fact, very rarely trades on a very straight trajectory like that. It's not all sell, 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 sell. There's a lot of buying that goes on in the meantime. So the real trajectory looks a lot like this. Okay? So you've got ups and downs in the market, okay, all the time. And the Uptick Rule says, or suggests, that the only short selling should be allowed on an uptick. So you see here, we've got the share trends down, and then there's an uptick. Why? Because somebody's stepping in to buy. Perhaps it's somebody like Jack who's buying some of his shares back because he doesn't know that it's going to fall all the way down. So the Uptick Rule says, rather than selling in a decline, like say at this point here, okay, you can only sell once the share has moved up. So you can sell on the uptick, okay? Uptick here, the uptick here, the uptick. Oh, sorry, that's not an uptick. The uptick here, okay? So you can only sell after the share has moved up. Why? Well, because the theory is that by waiting for the share to rise back up again, then it means that you are not capitalizing on the decline. It's allowing it to rise back up, and only then can you sell. So it gives the share a chance to recover. Okay, so that's the theory. Now, for as many people that will come out and champion this concept of bringing back the Uptick Rule, there are just as many people who will come out and say it actually makes no difference. Why? Because it's a tick. It's an uptick. You see these ticks in the markets all the time, and it only has to be 1 penny higher, 1 cent. That's all it has to be, one little unit for it to go up for you to be able to make that trade. Is that going to make a difference? Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of debate about this. But I can tell you, there are a lot of short sellers who are going to be very unhappy if this comes back in, because they're going to feel that it's going to restrict them in some way. It's going to make it less likely for them to make money. Of course, the people who argue against it say, oh, well, if you leave the uptick rule out, then it's going to allow the short sellers to jump on a stock, drive it down, push the stock, down to $1 or wherever it may be, and leave them and their clients, very badly needing a drink.